Are you someone who doesn't see every movie that comes out? Do you hate your friends and strangers asking if you have seen a movie and then freak out when you haven't? Well, join the You Hate to See It Podbean, and you can join Jeff as he talks with Adam, but not me, about movies that Adam forced him to watch, but not me. So you don't have to. Who knows? Maybe you'll finally go see a movie.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So we got our fun, fresh new episode of Drunken Jurors, I think is what we call this segment of our fucking podcast. I can't remember. I've been drinking for a hot minute. But no, yeah, so we're gonna talk about the Turpin. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Why was I allowed to drink before the Turpentine? We're talking about turpentine. We're talking about the Turpin family.
Isn't turpentine a paint thinner?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. That seems about right. Does anyone care? No. Do I? Absolutely not. But I'm Jeff.
I'm Adam.
I'm Nick.
And we apologize for this absolute awful fucking intro. But tonight I am drinking actually something that Nick raves about all the time. And I've been mixing it with Diet Coke because I've been drinking it not cold because there's no ice in the place I live now. And I like iced bourbon and whiskeys, so their ice machine doesn't work, man, so I don't have ice. What do you want?
It's weird.
Go grab snow from outside. It's literally snow.
Oh, shit, you right.
This is disgusting snow right now.
It is really gross. Someone just drove to get food. Yes, it's bad.
I'm driving. Oh my fucking god! I'm drinking Evan Williams bottled in bond, but I'm mixing it with Diet Coke. Not a lot. I'm like putting a splash in it just so it's like not
tasty.
Yeah, so it's not this like dry bourbon with not being cold. So that's what I'm doing. It's the life I'm living.
I am drinking vodka lemonade with ice.
With my co-host.
I am drinking Bjorgorkjong Diet Cola.
You can't say that. World War III is literally happening.
Bjorgorkjong. True. Yeah. As I
it's
have
Burger
the,
King.
As I have
You've
the
upset-
BBC live feed up right now.
You've upset everyone.
Yeah.
So I mean,
sorry,
before we get
I
into
upset the
anything,
Russia's
Ukrainians.
coming after Downers Grove next.
Gosh, shit. Sorry, we thought it was Russia. My bad. It looked like Crimea on a map. Right, Russia invaded Ukraine today, for the record.
Yeah, so as the day of recording, Russia invaded Ukraine. Fuck them. So, you know what's almost as bad as that? The Turpin family. So we covered the Nodick family, with Michelle Nodick being the worst mother ever, and how she basically somehow convinced her like third or fourth husband to go in with her, and then they ended up like murdering 3 people, but he never really accepted it because I mean he wasn't really ever a serious part of it, except he disposed a body or 2. You know, that fun episode. Go back and listen to it. It's a good one. Going to be way more in depth than what this is because there's actually not a lot about this. But yeah, we're gonna talk about the Turpin family. We're gonna do it a little bit differently than the rest of our episodes. It's gonna be more of a conversation between us, and I'm hoping between all of us, but at least between Nick and I, with the psychological breakdowns of what happens with kids when they're, you know, abused like this in a certain way, and then when they come out of it, because this happened in 2018 is when January 14th 2018 is when the parents were arrested, and they were tried pretty quick because they made a plea deal where they didn't end up having an actual trial. They just pled guilty to everything and got life in prison. And they actually, David Turpin, as we'll get into later, refused to say anything about it, and still to this day has. So the only thing we have is that's really like recent and updated is the what is Adam's source and one of mine, which is the 20 for 20 episode they did on it called like, what is it? The House of Horrors. Fuck. Give me a second. Escape from a House of Horrors 2020. So it's really kind of all we have to go off of, and I hate it, but we've had this set up for a while as a topic, so we're just gonna do it. So we've all done the research into it. It's just sadly not as much as we would have liked to have. Yeah, I mean, you guys ready? As ready as we can be. We want to do sources here.
I was born ready. Sources.
Yes.
Season 44, episode 7 of 2020.
Sources. Jeff. TBD. TBD.
So my source, one of the many, was The Family Next Door, the heartbreaking imprisonment of the 13 Turpin siblings and their extraordinary rescue by John Glatt, which was narrated by Sean Grindell, which is what I listened to. And let me tell you, his voice is not a great thing to listen to for that long.
No,
it's not. And also, so I also watched the one from Hulu, which was the Turpin 13 Family Secrets Exposed. And then I also watched Escape from a House of Horror, the 20 for 20 by ABC, I guess is what it was on when I watched it.
Season 44, episode 7. I remember that episode.
Amazing. It's almost like the only episode you've ever watched.
Yeah.
you don't know how often I watch 2020.
Nick, what were your sources?
Jeff.
He said Jeff.
TBD.
Yeah.
TBD.
You son of a bitch.
What episode number is this going to be, Adam?
I think this is 33 or 34.
Episode 33 of Drunken Jurors, presented by You Hate to See It.
I fucking hate you with a burning passion. The father and mother of the Turpin family are David and Louise Turpin. Louise's original maiden name was Robinette. It's out there that David Turpin first had feelings for Louise when she was 10 years old. And he is 7 years older than her. He was 17 at the time. They met through a Pentecostal church, which theirs was like theirs is weird. So it was so
services are wild.
Yeah, so they're very set on like how evil the devil is.
Pentecostals talk in tongues.
Yeah,
they're the ones who do the tongue.
That was their whole thing. Was like talking in tongues.
They're more Satanists than Satanists are.
No.
They're very anti-devil.
So David's family was like very known for their Pentecostal faith because his grandfather, a century earlier, his name was Reverend King Turpin Jr. He had fallen for a 16-year-old when he was almost 32. So this might be a weird family genetic thing, which I hope pedophilia doesn't go through genetics, because that's not a good time.
Remember like 15 years ago when everyone was saying like homosexuality was genetic?
Yeah, as if that wasn't like a weird chemical. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that here.
That was a wild time.
So his grandfather had met his wife when he was 32 and she was 16. They had 8 children, but she died giving the birth to twins. And when she died, Reverend King Turpin Jr. Married the children's nurse. You want to know how that marriage came to be?
Death.
Let me read it straight to you from the book. The day after Christmas, 1932, the charismatic Pentecostal preacher made a deal with her father to swap Bertha, who was the nurse, the children's nurse that he ends up marrying, to swap Bertha for his flashy Studebaker Big 6 car.
I don't know what to do with that information.
Maybe you should have fucking researched this a little bit, so you could have been fucking useful to this podcast.
Come back. I have dog.
Oh God.
So over the next 18 years.
Is her name Ukraine? Because I want to invade her.
Jesus fucking Christ. No, I gave you her name. Her name's Bertha. Jesus.
I'm gonna
rush
in there.
He ended up
I'm
having
gonna put
11.
in her-
He ended up having 11 more children with Bertha. He had a total of 19 kids.
Yeah, that's
Fucking
too many.
19. Is
That's-
that not a thing we're gonna talk about?
That's about 16 too many.
Think
I
they're
think
Catholic?
I think the cutoff should be 3 for all families.
They're like Catholic
I
rabbits.
think you should have to get a license to reproduce. Nonetheless, have 3.
I can't wait for none of us to qualify for that license.
Dude
Same.
couldn't back out of a driveway. Adam, these jokes are gonna age very poorly in 2 weeks when they've nuked Kiev.
So basically, David and his brother had like really big respect for their grandfather. Don't know why. Other than the fact that he had 19 kids, he spoke in tongues apparently. Like, because when they moved to Virginia or West Virginia, I don't fucking remember. I honestly actually don't care, because they're garbage. He spoke in tongues while giving, like, he would give like a sermon or a church service, and then halfway through he would like go through tongues and everyone would be amazed because, you know, that's a fucking Pentecostal thing that's absolutely amazing, you know, speaking gibberish that no one knows. I'm not coming at anyone who's Pentecostal, I swear to God. You guys are garbage.
Hey, it's not the Catholics this time.
Yeah,
we'll get to
it's
you.
me. Yeah, no, we'll get there.
Wait, hold on, what?
They had like this weird respect for him, and as we'll get into later, David and Louise had very, very strict like religious beliefs, which we'll talk about on how they ended, why they kind of treated their family that way, because it's really the only thing we have to go off of like why they might have done what they did. So yeah, so when David's born, they end up moving to Princeton. That's kind of where they stay. Their family ends up attending the Princeton Church of God on Oliver Avenue, where they became close friends with the Robinette family, and that's where David and Louise met each other and kind of ended up knowing each other their entire lives. And by that I mean her entire life, because he's much older than her. So Louise has not. We'll talk about a little bit later, especially when how she treats her family and her kids. Louise had a bad upbringing. Her mom was sexually abused by her father. Her mom was abused by her granddad, sexually abused. And when her mom ended up having her and her 2 sisters, they got abused. And how it went was her granddad had a lot of money, and basically he would pay off his daughter to sexually harass his granddaughters. Like, she would bring them over, they would go in, and he would sexually abuse them. And then when he came out, he would walk them out and he would hand her a wad of money. And that was like a very common occurrence. So that's that's Louise's like whole upbringing in a nutshell. But like I said, she was like 10 or 11 when David met her, and he was like 17 or 18, and he fell for her like immediately. So to put this in more recent terms, this fucker groomed the shit out of her. Like, they got married when she was 16. What happens is David was a very nerdy. He had a bowl cut in high school. He always wore like really nice dress clothes / suits. He was like the captain of the chess team. Like, he was extremely intelligent, but he was just awkward. He ends up going to Virginia Tech. He ends up graduating Virginia Tech with a degree in engineering, and he pretty much immediately gets hired by Lockheed Martin. And when that happens is when he's still grooming Louise, basically, for a lack of better terms. He's basically just grooming her, and he tells her how much he loves her and like they should get married and they should run away. So they do. They run away. He literally kidnaps her.
How old was she?
She was in high school, I think. Not even.
They got married when he was 26 and she was 20. I know that.
No, she wasn't
Or
20.
no, that's when they had their
She
first
was
kid.
Yeah, she was 16.
Yeah, she was 16 when they got married.
How they got
had their
married?
first
How they
kid
got married was he literally called the school as her father, got a fake mustache, walked in, signed her out, and they just drove.
Huh.
And they eloped. And her dad called her in as like kidnapped because he went to the school and was like, "What the fuck?" And they're like, "You signed her out." And he's like, "The fuck I did." Like, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like mustache, glasses," and he's like, "I don't. That's not me. I'm standing right here, right now. Like, I did not sign out my daughter." Like, so he calls in, like, his kid is missing, so all the police are looking for him, and they end up getting a hold of each other, like David and his dad or her dad, and they come up with the thing is like he talks to his daughter, and he's like, "If you come back, if you truly want to be married to him, then that's fine, but I'm not supporting you." And they come back, they get his permission, and they elope, and they fuck off. They end up moving to Texas.
I was gonna say, what state did they get married in?
I think they get married in Virginia or Tennessee or something.
And this was in the
late 80s.
late 80s. I'm surprised they didn't need like a parent's consent.
They
Because I've
did.
heard of,
They got Luis's father's consent. That's what the deal was. He was like, if you bring her back, and then you talk to his daughter, he was like, if this is truly what you want, then yes, you have my permission, but we're done. Like, I'm not supporting you. Like, and she said, yeah, this is what I want. And they came back and he gave the approval.
I would have had the cops sitting outside the house.
Yeah. Yeah. But he like David was attracted to her when she was like 12. Like it
Gross.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Real gross.
And the thing is like us saying gross, like that's not even like the worst thing about this entire story.
Yeah.
Like this gets significantly worse. Like it's gross, but it sets up everything else that happens.
So he is gross for doing that. Her being attracted to him makes sense given her history.
Well, she's raised in a very religious Pentecostal family. Like
she's
her being
raised very religious. Like the whole wasn't she also then would you say she was raped by her grandfather?
Yeah.
So,
so
like,
her whole aspect of love is fucking
like
skewed in the first place.
Like as awful as it is, I understand why she finds him attractive, why she wants to be with an older man that much older than her.
He's an authority figure.
Yeah, I was gonna say so Nick and I can kind of get into this little psychological part of it now. Her being sexually abused already takes away that ability to love, because you lose your innocence so early on. You lose the ability to like truly understand what love is, and you will take anything that makes you feel like you're protected. And I don't want to throw around stereotypes or anything, but like that's why like women who are like sexually abused and stuff become like prostitutes, or they find a dude who's abusive. Like anyone who feels as like an authority or somewhat secure in some way, that's kind of why they lean towards that, because it's like the somewhat feeling of safe, but also they're used to the abuse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It can also completely take everything I just said and throw it out the window, but I don't.
No, being exposed to it early, that's their sense of normal. That's what they think. Like
it literally takes away your ability to like fully understand what love is. Like at an early age.
Yes, kind of. There's that aspect.
It skews it,
but
like
yeah, but there's also if that's your normal, how can you tell if something's wrong? Like, if that makes
Yeah.
sense at all. If it's, oh, this is how my father treats me. Oh,
Or your
my
grandfather, not
my
even
oh
your like it was your
grandfather.
grandfather, yeah.
If this is how my grandfather treats me, this is how men just treat women, and therefore this is perfectly normal.
Especially if it's through your own mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like your mother is paid for it, so she's technically okay with it. Like that's going to skew a lot of things. Like it takes what you just said and adds it to like a whole nother level. Like, or takes it to like the point of like it really being true to you. Because it's like, oh, this is how my grandfather treats me, and my mom's okay with it. Then like this is what it
Was
is.
her
Like, this
mom
is,
abused?
yes, her
She
mom
was,
was
okay.
abused beforehand. Well, but also at her age, would you assume that she would know that her mom's abused or like was abused when
No,
she was a
well,
kid?
well,
But
no. My question is that if the mom was abused, then
yeah,
she
that's why her mom would,
would think that, okay, this is normal.
yeah. And so like her and David run off. They end up in Texas. He works for Lockheed Martin, and he's making 6 figures a year. He's making over 100,000 or around almost 100,000, if not more. And this is back in the 80s. So, I mean, not a huge change of like what that would be now, but like still now making 100,000 is very good, especially for one person. Luis ended up, she never works. She doesn't work a day in her fucking life. So before they have kids, they Luis never wants to go back to Virginia and see her family, but they bring her family down once a year. And her sister in the documentaries I watched, or not, the one on Hulu, the fucking Christ, I can't remember the name of it. The Hulu documentary is a lot about them talking to her sister, and her sister would say like the best time of the year was because when they went and saw her, because they were so poor like throughout their entire lives that seeing them, they would take them, every meal would be to like a nice restaurant. They would always go out and like go to like Six Flags, Disney, Universal, whatever, like any of the like just nice things that cost like even a family that is doing well, like it's still it's something you kind of save up for.
If
They
you
would just take them to them like all like once a year. Like they would have them down for a week and they would just take them to nice stuff and all the time have this like luxurious life to show them basically.
and if you show that to a child, that's definitely going to influence them.
Well, they didn't have kids yet.
Okay.
So they didn't have kids yet. This is what they're showing her family to like basically almost like prove that this marriage was worth it, because David was like a good like he worked for Lockheed Martin. We can all assume that that's not a great time. He was an engineer for Lockheed Martin nonetheless. So
I automatically bothered on that. Like,
they end up moving a lot, but they end up having their first kid, and around the time they end up having their second kid is when they stop inviting her family to stop like down every year. Because this isn't really where the abuse starts. But Louise always, since she was like 12 or 13, always said she wanted like 12 kids. Which is a weird thing for someone that age. Like having that many kids, that's a very strange thing.
Yeah.
And she always said she wanted that many kids. And her and David just started popping out kids all the time. The first couple kids, like, oh shit, the time of their arrest, their oldest is like 29, then it's like 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 21, 19, 18. Like it's, I don't remember exactly, but it's like they're fucking clustered. And from what the people like in the documentaries, the psychologists they talk to, it's like Luis is only good with young kids, and that's all she wants. And the second they become past a toddler, like she's fucking done with them. Like it's just she doesn't want it anymore, and she wants the next one. Like she wants to be able to take care of something and nourish it. And the second that it is somewhat in any way independent, she wants to fuck off. Like she's done with it.
she wants a new toy.
Yeah, she wants the control. And the second it has any sort of autonomy or independence, like she's done. And like that's even if they're like 2 or 3. She's just like, I'm fucking done with this. So they end up having quite a few kids. I'm not going to use any of the names of the kids because to this day, there's only 2, I believe,
There,
that are like, there's like 2 that are willing to like have their names out there and
There's-
stuff. I just
there's
don't want to
3.
even fuck with that.
there's
I just don't want to fuck with it. Like I don't.
I guess. Well,
You can see
one-
any name. You can see
the
all
one
the
that's
kids' names when you
important.
look 'em
I
up,
think
but
we can talk about the one that's important.
Jordan,
Yeah.
the one who made the 911 call. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't want to really go down that route. Their names are out there. It's not hard to find, but I don't want to use them. I can only. This happened 4 years ago, just over 4 years. This is still super tough for them. As we'll talk about, they're extremely like not uneducated. They're just undereducated. They were malnourished. They were treated poor. Like it's not their fault, but like I don't want to put even more of a fucking spotlight on their specific names and stuff like that. But they end up having kids. They're in Texas. They live in a town. It's like Rio Vista or something. It has like 740 people living in it, and they're very secluded. The Turpins, so David and Luis end up filing for bankruptcy really early on because they just spend more than they have, and he makes almost 100,000 a year. They have credit card bills out the fucking ass, like that they can't pay. Like it's wild. So that's why they stop inviting her family. They have kids, but they're treating those kids like absolute shit. Once they're through a certain age, they start neglecting them. They're buying them clothes, but those clothes never have the price tags ever taken off them. They're hung up. They're never allowed to be worn.
Yeah.
They buy them toys, but those toys are never allowed to be opened. They sell the price tags on them. They're set into like a different room. Like if they're opened in any way, shape, or form, like those kids are like they're getting abused in a way that we'll talk about pretty soon. So David ends up moving around a lot because he works for Lockheed Martin. He's being switched around from place to place. He also he doesn't work for Lockheed Martin the entire time. He ends up working for, let me see, Northrop Grumman is like another place. But
I actually applied for them.
They have this luxurious life that they show off to the outside, but they're so in depth because they personally, the 2 of them are going out and spending so much money. They're going out having dinner every night. They're buying themselves nice meals. Their kids are eating peanut butter sandwiches, just peanut butter on bread, 1 meal a day. That is all they get.
At one point they were eating ketchup, mustard, and ice cubes.
Yeah, that's what Jordan said she ended up eating at some points. Like when she was really starving, she would end up just eating ketchup, mustard. Like she taught herself how to just eat condiments and stuff that wouldn't be super noticed.
Yeah, because if they ate more food, they were punished.
They would be accused of stealing. They would be chained up.
Was it like a money thing or was it just a control thing?
Well, it was control.
Both. Well, not both. They would say it's a money thing, but it was a control thing.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had the money.
They end up having 13 kids. That's just, I don't want to get into like all of it because it's not a lot. It's just there's not a lot there to really go through. They end up having 13 kids. This is something they do.
Well,
like,
hold on.
Through all of them.
So I'd like to talk about the oldest kid, who was 29 at the time of them being found. She did her first 3 years of grade school. She was in the 3rd grade.
Yeah, she went to grade school, and no one talked to her because she smelled so bad.
Because she smelled bad.
She had candy wrappers
so she
used
skinny.
A candy wrapper as her hair tie.
And no kid wanted to talk to her, which, as all children are kind of assholes, and they're very like, oh, you're gross, you smell bad, you don't look right, I don't want to be friends with you. That makes sense.
They bullied her.
Yeah, she was bullied, and then her parents took her out and created a homeschool that no other child ever went to a real school ever since Their oldest was in 3rd grade. And the homeschool was not a homeschool. I mean, they said it was a homeschool, but as someone who was homeschooled, the government doesn't check up on you and make sure that you're actually being schooled. They just assume that's happening.
So yeah, that's gonna get into the thing I want to talk about right now. Is so they end up moving to California, and while they're in California, is when they end up getting caught. But while they're in California, they register. David and Louise register their homeschool as a school, and he registers himself as the principal and Louise as the lead teacher. And for some reason, that was never questioned throughout the entire time that happened.
Hold on, that's normal.
Yeah.
So when my mom registered her like us as homeschooling, like she had to register as like 2 people, which so my dad was the principal and my mom was the teacher. Technically, like that's just how it works. That's like every school needs a principal and the teacher. And so when you register as a homeschool, someone needs to be designated principal, someone needs to be designated.
And I will say that the documentary
That's really stupid.
I was going to say that's stupid, but also the documentary plays that up a little bit because they make it seem like that's not a normal thing. If that is a normal thing, then
that's how it was done for me, at least. And I wasn't sexually assaulted and chained up and stuff. So
good to know.
So,
we'll do your episode later.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
We don't care.
We're not gonna have you back.
You're actually going to Ukraine now. Have fun in Kiev.
Yeah, we'll only talk about it when you're in World War III.
Hmm.
So yeah, they end up moving to California, and they do they register their family as like a homeschooling and everything. So these kids don't really have an education because they registered them as they were they were at school and they homeschooled them. They didn't teach them a fucking thing. Literally, the oldest couple kids taught the other kids how to like say vowels and like learn the alphabet, and then it was kind of just having to learn how words work to like throughout just talking
and they
to each
weren't
other.
supposed to. Like, this isn't like homeschool stuff. This is the parents didn't give a shit, so they had to sneak teaching the younger kids anything.
Yeah. Well, also they're chained. We'll talk about it now. The kids are chained up. If they fuck up in any way, like even if like it doesn't mean if you like fuck up. Like if the parents thought you fucked up in any way, you got chained up for days, weeks, possibly fucking months at a time. And all you got to eat was a peanut butter sandwich once a day. And that was if you weren't chained up. Who knows what they were fed while they were chained up. And they don't live in these big ass houses. Like they live in houses with like 3 or 4 bedrooms with 13 kids. There's just bunk beds in every room and everyone's chained up to a fucking bed, basically. By the end of it, like they just ignore their kids. Like they just chain them up and then fuck off. And so yeah, they would teach each other how to talk. And if you watch any of the documentaries, they show parts of like when Jordan called 911, when she was talking to the deputy that showed up. Or if you can end up hearing any audio of any of them talking, their vocabulary, like it's not their vocabulary's fucked. The way they use words, or they just don't know the word for it, is
the amount of times
like if Adam were to come up and talk to me the way they did, I'd be like, Adam, what the fuck is wrong? Did you get hit in the head again?
The amount of times I heard wasn't in incorrect places in that documentary, like they meant to say weren't a lot and they always said wasn't. And like I
think the biggest part is if you watch the 20 for 21 is they show a lot of the body cam footage of the deputy talking to Jordan when she calls to 911 and he finally shows up. He asked her if she takes because he's a cop. He's been trained in a lot of situations. Not that all cops do every situation right. I get it. Some cops suck. We're not going to get into that. But he does a good job. Like she's not talking right. And he does what I think a logical cop would do, which is, did you forget to take any medication? And she just looks him in the eyes. She goes, what is medication? And he's like, do you take a medication like regularly? She's like, I don't know what medication means. He's like, do you take pills? She's like, I've never taken a pill I've never taken a pill in my life, is what she responds with. And that's kind of where he's like, okay. And then she shows him the photos of her siblings chained up, and he's like, oh, okay. And she's like, these are real. Like, I'm not faking this. And I think he realizes, he's like, he calls her back up immediately. And it's like an hour before they actually like go up and knock on the door.
Well, let's back up slightly. Do you want to talk about like the night, like that, like her escaping and everything like that?
Before that, I want to talk about why there's a possibility of like why Dave and Luis did this. And that's because there's a thing of, with very religious, this is a thing that I think Nick and I can kind of hit on. I mean, you probably can too, but with very religious people, it's like making a family cult. Like when you have such beliefs that you will take your family and build them into like this, like such a religious group that it's a cult basically, but it's within your own family.
I would disagree with every word you just said personally, but
but that's the thing, is from what they talk about in one of the documentaries, I can't remember which one. It actually might have been I think it was the book I listened to. This isn't like the first family cult, and this isn't the only one. Like we can't tell in America how many like family cults there are, but they think that David and Luis were trying to make like a family cult where it was like, it's based off religion. You don't allow the outside in. And it's like, you raise them past the like level of like what everyone else would assume is like an adult, and they're like allowed out into the world. They're doing their own thing. Like, you are raising them not to be independent. Like, you're not raising them to, when they're 18, finally go out and do something. You're raising them in a very specific value, and you're not expecting them to leave. And that's what a lot of psychologists think that the Turpins were doing, but the Turpins just refused to talk about it. Like, Luis and David refused to talk to like anyone. Like, they literally just took guilty pleas. Like, there's no information from them about why they did what they did. Like, and it's very, I get where you're coming from, but also it is very cult like. And Pentecostal, I'm not saying all Pentecostals are pieces of shit, but Pentecostal is a very, very specific, Jesus Christ, I threw a T at the end of that.
No, I heard it.
Yeah, very specific, like, delegation of Christianity.
So Pentecostal, there's a lot of different sects. So
Pentecostal really plays off the devil
for
Christianity.
There's this idea that there are different denominations of Christianity that are cult-like evangelical. So you have Pentecostals and Mormons are the two that I can think of right now. Very, people looking outside will think very cultish. The basic idea of them is just Christian with extra steps. And then you have the people who use that faith as a stepping stone to launch a cult, to launch an evil act. People think that a lot of the times it's a Mormon. There are Mormons, great people. Little off, but overall great people. And then you have the guy who goes out to ranch in Utah and has 16 wives. Half of them are his sister
Our sisters. Yeah.
or his sister.
Well, true.
Or his child.
Yeah, that's a cult. That's bad. That's against the law. That's bad morally. Every single Mormon will condemn that. The same thing goes for Pentecostal. Same thing goes for Catholic. I mean, as a practicing Catholic, you don't hear me going, hey, priests raping kids is a great thing. You don't hear that. And it's not true. So
Music starts playing.
Jeff's gonna edit that very intriguingly.
Very well, yes.
Yeah. Great. So I would say that it had almost nothing to do. I would argue that this has very little to do with their faith, with them being Pentecostal. I think this has a lot to do with everyone going on a power trip, everyone thinking, oh, I'm God. I'm the highest authority here.
Yeah.
Therefore, what I say goes. Therefore, I can molest my
Well,
kids.
so in the 2020 documentary, they talked about why they were allowed to do some of these things to their children and use passages from the Bible as reasoning
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah, that's why they were allowed to, like, not allowed, but that's why they felt okay with threatening them of, like, if you mess up, like, enough, I'm allowed to kill you.
Yeah, and actually believing that. And I don't like they showed one passage from the Bible, and
It was from Deuteronomy, yeah.
I didn't even read it, but they didn't give like examples. They just said they used passages from the Bible to say why we.
Well, the
can do
kids
the things
also
we're
aren't.
doing.
This
I
is
hate
where
to say
this
it, the
is
kids
again where
aren't
we-
intelligent enough to know it. Like,
Yeah,
This is again where we go, hey, Old Testament, New Testament, very different. Old Testament is a little bit more
Grizzly?
hypothetical. Not hypothetical. Metaphorical. More metaphorical. A little bit more. Hey, lessons, commandments. This is history of everything.
don't take the story for this, like, the details of the story.
Yes.
Take the story for the
Whereas-
overall idea
whereas
of it.
The New Testament is the gospel, and then outside of that, you have like letters to the Corinthians, which are in the Bible, but like they're actual historical letters written.
Yeah.
So different things, and also
It's
the Old Testament has been being used to demonize and to manipulate for centuries.
yeah.
The Old Testament?
Well, if you're Adam and I, the Bible in general, or in faith in general, has been kind of abused in a certain way, shape, or form for a while.
Without getting too, we've already had this episode. Without getting more into it, I would argue that faith and Christianity has done a greater good for the world than anything else before it.
I wouldn't argue that it hasn't. I'm just saying I get where the ideas come from. Like, I understand, as having a degree in psychology, I understand where people see things wrong, I guess.
I sympathize with people who were fed a misinterpretation of it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Well, that's the shitty thing is
that it can be
it's
so
taught to you by
easily
older
misinterpreted.
people. Yeah. Well, it's easily misinterpreted, and in your youth, any adult talking to you really is just an authority figure, and anyone can feed you the wrong thing. I won't say the Bible's a bad thing to teach a kid. I will say there are a lot of people that shouldn't teach kids what the Bible says, because I don't think it's fucking right, like what they think of it. Like, and that's the thing, as without getting too far into, like, if you want to listen to it, go back to our episode with us three and Dirk talking about religions and our different views of that. But it's easily misinterpreted, which I think is the problem. It's easy to misinterpret, and it's not because it's easy to misinterpret I don't know how to word it. It's easy to misinterpret by anyone. Like, you don't have to be intelligent to understand the Bible and its teachings. But if you're intelligent and you want to misinterpret it, you can fucking teach anyone anything you want about it. Like, that's not the problem with the Bible. That's just a problem with our fucking society. Is anyone can manhandle anything, really, if you think about it. Like, I could fucking probably go up to any slightly uneducated person and misinterpret the entire U.S. Constitution.
And this is where I'm gonna say that's the cost you pay for freedom and free will, and for being able to live somewhere where any idea you want is acceptable. That's the cost, and that's the cost I personally not let me be very clear. Let me be very clear here before this gets misinterpreted. Don't molest kids, whether you're Pentecostal or a priest or a Catholic priest. Don't, just at all. Never. That
if you're
off the
anyone,
table.
don't.
Anyone, yes.
You don't
please,
have
stop.
to have a religion. Don't do it.
Honestly,
Just go back
No.
to our Valentine's Day episode, everyone. Rape is bad.
yes. At
We
any
don't
age,
kink shame unless you're a pedophile.
yes, big time, and maybe furries. That's a different story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can discuss furries at a different time.
That's still up in the air.
It's
But-
not up in the air. It's just we haven't discussed it yet.
True. But that being said, evil exists, and being able to have that freedom to decide whatever, it's the price you pay. I'm willing to deal with it. So it's led us this far.
It's insert transition here.
Yeah, I don't know where.
Back to the Turpin family.
Yeah,
They abused their views on religion. I don't think I can deny that with this story. I think they abused their ideas of their religion and that they could manipulate a group. And they tried to I would personally think they tried to make a family cult, and it was just fucking even doing that. Like, I think, oh man, this is gonna sound bad. I think I could make a family cult better than this without the abuse. Like, I don't think you have to abuse people to make a fucking cult.
It's amazing the power you can do with love and support.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost equally, if not greater, than the power
so
you can do
huge
by
thing is-
hatred and abuse.
A huge thing is David thought he was charismatic. And anyone who's seen David or has known him in the past, that is the farthest thing from what David is he is the least charismatic person ever. He will like literally just tell people to like go away. Like he's like, I don't want to fucking talk to anyone. Like,
well, so the night started. So, Jordan, who's in the
it wasn't
2020
even night. It was
documentary-
very like
It was
late
early in
morning.
the morning.
Early, late-ish. Depends on what you think of morning. It,
It
was
was
like
night.
5 a.m.
It was nighttime in the
It
morning.
was 5 a.m.
Yeah. And Jordan and her family had been talking about how do they get help. They had no friends. They could barely speak. They have no social skills whatsoever. They really never been out of the house. They aren't allowed to shower. They don't change their clothes. And all of this, and her brother was chained up to his bed for an unknown reason, and their sister, unknown to me, she had two younger sisters who were chained up in their room, like literally chained, because they took food from the freezer because they were starving.
It wasn't even the freezer. It was just food.
Yeah,
They had,
so
like, I think the police in the body cam video they show it's like a quarter of a bag of Doritos and like maybe a
But-
couple pieces of bread or something.
but that was mom's food, so they weren't allowed to have it. So she chained them up. So Jordan was able to get a phone from one of her older siblings, because her older siblings were allowed to have phones, because at that point they had already been groomed into doing nothing, even with phones. So Jordan, who's 17 at the time, they have like a Ring doorbell of her jumping out of the window and like looking confused and then running down the street. Now, in the interview with her on 2020, she literally says, I was literally in the middle of the street because I didn't know what sidewalks were and that you weren't supposed to just be in the street.
So the reason she ended up doing that day was actually because she heard a conversation between her parents about how David's job is moving him to Oklahoma, and they had to move the next day. So they had to move the next day, and they talked about how they had to chain up all the kids to move. And she knew that if they chained up and moved, that if they moved, most people wouldn't believe it or something. Like, basically, she just thought that. So she ended up, she's like, I got to do it tonight. But she had gotten a phone from like her older sibling, because they for some reason they gave some kids smartphones.
So she had no idea where she was going because she'd like never been outside. So she starts running down the middle of the street, and
she didn't know what sidewalks were.
Yeah, and the only reason why she called 911 was because they used to watch Cops and knew, and that's why she took pictures of stuff, because she knew when watching Cops they always asked for proof of anything, and only knew the number 911 because of Cops, the TV show.
Yeah, her whole conversation with the dispatchers kind of like awkward to listen to.
Yeah,
because she's just like, she's uneducated. She doesn't really know how to relay it. Like the dispatcher asks her address, and she gives the entire zip code, like not the 5-digit zip code, like the entire
whole zip code. Because like she had found it on a slip of paper and didn't know what the address was.
She stole the an envelope that was mailed to them. It's fucking sad.
So she gets, and a deputy comes to meet her, who the deputy that was his.
Well, that goes back to the question, or the thing that I said earlier, of he listened to her, but he asked her like what I would believe any good cop would ask is, like, when you're talking to a person like that, you want to get everything. And he asked her like, did you forget to take any medication?
And
she's like, what is medication? And he's like, do you have medication prescribed to you? She's like, what is medication? He's like, have you taken any pills? She's like, I've never taken a pill in my life. And that's when he was like, okay. And she was like, I have photos of my like sister's chained up.
He asked her, do you have any proof? And she was like, yes, and I've watched Cops and I know that you need proof, so I took pictures. And
she shows them to him, and that's immediately when he goes, I get into the back of my car and you'll be safe. And then he gets her into the back of his car, and he says, he becomes very genuine. Like, he asked for her phone.
He asked her, are you injured? And she goes, what is injured? And she constantly was saying, like, they're all dirty, but they were covered in bruises. Like, yes, they were actually physically dirty, but they were covered in bruises. She didn't know what any injury was.
She actually, the word for, or the phrase she used for bruises was, they did in on them, is what she used as the word, like, not the word, the phrase for like bruises, like her parents beating them, was they did in on them. But he got her into his car. He told her that she would be safe there, and he asked her for her phone, so he keep looking through it, and he found the videos of her singing in the bathroom. And he went, you have a really good voice. This is actually like this is really cool of you. And like, he became a genuine person. He called for backup the second they got into the car. But as Nick and I know, cops have codes for that. Like, you would never actually hear a cop ask for like, a thing that you hear in movies and shows is like, oh, I need backup at blah, blah, blah. A cop would never actually do that. A cop will say, I think it's like 1011, or it changes from a department to department. It's like 1011 or
1020 is fight in progress, I think.
That's a fight in progress, but I think backup is a different one, because they need backup, but it's not like we need backup now. It's like, I need someone here with me to go do what I'm about to do.
Yeah, and then they knock on, they show us in the 2020 of like,
this is a fun thing Nick and I are about to get into, I think.
they show them all of their cam footage, and they knock on the door, and they say like it was 2 minutes 10 seconds for anyone to answer the door.
Which I could understand for a normal person because they do it at like between 7 and 7:30 a.m. on like a I don't know, whatever day, like 7 to 7:30 is still a time where most people who work 9 to 5s probably aren't up at that time. I get like if I were to be woken up, like I'm at work at 7 a.m., but like if I were to be woken up at like 5:15 a.m. to a knock on the door, I would probably like wouldn't hear it right away. I would hear the knock and I would be groggy. I'd be like, what the fuck is that? And I would be like, what the fuck's knocking at my door? And I would take my sweet ass time getting there. And then I would see it's a cop. But also, who's to say we know from the documentaries and from the book, they told their older kids who weren't shackled to go unshackle and unchain the other kids. So
well, then they tell the parents that, yeah, we're just here to do a welfare check. Do you have kids? And they went, yes. And they were like, okay. And so they just start walking in.
Nope, that's not what happens.
I thought they just walked in.
No, this is the thing Nick and I are going to get into, which is going to explain everything in a better way. So they walk up and they're talking to them and they're like, we got a call for a welfare check. And the kid, they go, why, what? And they're like, we got a call from a teenager, or not a teenager. We got a call from someone who says they live here for a welfare check that there are kids chained up in here. And they go, we just woke up. Like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, why are you here? And like, they explain it again. And they're like, okay, like that, whatever. And they're like, and one of the cops, this is why they're allowed in. This is the thing Nick and I are going to go into because I don't think a lot of people understand this.
Well, they explain in the documentary of like
they don't really.
If a kid's involved, they don't need a warrant. They say that in the documentary.
They actually don't. That's not it. What happens in the documentary, the 20 for 20, is what happens if you watch the body cam footage. Is a cop goes. They explain it. They say, we got a call. Someone said that there was. She goes, who did that? Like, who said they were like they lived here and like said that there was like kids chained up? And they're like, we don't actually know. Like we just got told, we got the house address and this was the house. And one of the deputies in the background goes, can we come in and check? And Luis says, yeah, of course. And then one of the deputies starts walking in, and that's when David goes, don't you need a search warrant? And they go, no, we don't need a search warrant for welfare checks. It's not that they don't need a search warrant for welfare checks. It's that Louise said yes to them coming in.
So cops are like vampires.
Yes,
but at any point you can also kick them out.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is you can also tell them to leave if they don't have a search warrant.
At any point before they find something.
Yeah, before they actually find something incriminating.
Once they find something, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And in the body cam footage, they were walking. They come up to the two little girls, and they saw the bruising on their arms, and they were like, "Hey, do you know? We heard that there was chains here. Do you know where the chains were at?" And they were asking the kids, like, while one of the officers.
Well, they found the two, like, not the two youngest, but they found two very young. They were like 5 and 4 or something.
The one officer was like talking to the parents to keep, and he was able to keep Dave occupied.
So they did a very good job of how they went throughout the house with the search. One of the backup was their sergeant. So if a sergeant is probably the highest person you're ever going to get onto a crime scene. Lieutenants usually won't show up for most things.
Lieutenant, yeah.
And a lieutenant's really the only person higher than a sergeant. Sergeants are the only ones who will really do field work after a certain point. And when he called for backup with his code, when the original call came in, it was like 5:48 a.m. When they actually entered the house, it was like 7:30 a.m. It was a while before anything actually happened. The deputy that showed up and talked to Jordan took 14 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a while before they actually ended up, but like they got they got a sergeant in there. They got 3 other deputies, and they were smart about it. They had the sergeant go in because the sergeant is most likely the most experienced one there, and he knows what is probably going to be looked for, and he can probably understand the details of what was told to them already better than most people, because yet again, he's probably the most experienced. But they were smart. They had a deputy stay at the front door and talk and distract them, which isn't like most people would be like, well, that's shitty, that's going to be incriminating. No, like that's they had every right to be in there. They literally went, can we come in? And Luis said yes. And if you are someone who lives in the house and you say yes, cops are allowed to walk in. That's literally it. They were also allowed to tell them to leave at any point, and they didn't.
If someone who's not the homeowner allows them into the house, they're allowed in. But once the homeowner says get out, they get out.
So basically, the deputy was just there to keep them talking long enough for them not to kick them out.
It wasn't so like it sounds shitty. Yes and no. So yes, he was there to try to like not really distract them, but he was there to honestly probably get more information out of them if he could without them being distracted by the other deputies.
Well, and I also know like the cops like split up, and so one pair finds the 2 girls, starts talking to them to get them to tell them where the chains are at, which they find the girls lead them to the chains, which are just thrown in the closet
after. Yes.
And then they
it's actually the deputy. The reason they got to find the chains was actually, or why they got the arrest was the deputy who was talking to David, who stayed at the front door. They asked him, do you have any weapons in the house? And he went, I have a gun, but it's locked up. And he's like, locked up's good. We like that. And the other deputies were just walking past him. He was talking to David. And while he was talking to David in the front room, he finally looked past and saw a door past all the packing boxes to the left, which all the other rooms. So it was like a straight walk in. And once you walked in a certain amount, it was the living room, the dining room, kitchen. And then you walked a little bit farther past that to the right, and it was bedrooms. But he saw the bedroom to the immediate left of the front door past the boxes that they had like piled up. And he called his sergeant back and he's like, hey, we have a room over here. And that's actually where they got the right to arrest them, because they walked in and there was a child chained up.
Yeah, that they couldn't get unchained in time. And so they just put boxes up in front instead.
Yeah.
And then so they start arresting them and walking out, and literally the officer goes, do you have where do you have the keys to unlock the thing? And they just
Luis literally says, oh, is that what this is about? Yeah, you have kids chained up in your house. And what the fuck do you mean?
And she just goes, the older kids know where the keys are at. And so the cops just go back and ask the older kids where the keys are at, and they show them. Like it was like so
as they show them the keys is when the sergeant finds the chains in the closet of the room where the little kids were at. They literally had the little kids chained up, like 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds were chained up to bunk beds, and they would be chained up for months.
Yeah, and then after that, I mean, it really just went to and now they're here on trial and they plead guilty, and then their kids.
That's literally what happened, though. There wasn't a trial because they brought it up, and they just literally, David to this day has refused to talk about it at all, like in any way, shape, or form. He has denied everything. Like he just refuses to talk about it, so they can't get anything out of him. And Luis went off of the she tried to do like an insanity plea, saying that she has like this specific deranged part of narcissism,
and they basically just went, you were so mentally unwell to not even be able to do this to your children, we definitely don't want you in the streets regardless of your mental stability. So
they got charged with they got charged with 14 felony counts, including cruelty to dependent adults, child cruelty, torture, and false imprisonment. They both were sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years.
And then
they both pled guilty. There were only 2 kids that actually did like the
they went there.
they went there and actually
and
did
they
like a
spoke.
yeah,
to
they
them.
did like a witness. I fucking God, why can't I think of the word?
It
Not
was
witness
basic.
testimony. It was afterwards.
It was
Victim
basically-
statement.
Yeah, I was like, it's something that like just telling like basically fuck you. Like
They did victim statements, and they were the only two to do it. And it's just
honestly,
stupid.
Well,
It's
and
just
then
like I
the-
don't get how. It's not that I don't get how it happened. They did a good job of fucking hiding it. Like it's just like
Well, and-
13 fucking kids, and somehow nothing happened beforehand. That like
and
it's
just like
wild.
as crazy as all this is, the poor kids, it just gets worse because the government
yes,
fucked them.
that's a whole
royally.
nother thing. The foster
This could be a-
system, the
hold on,
the
the-
foster.
I'm here for a fuck the government tirade. I'm here for
Could
it.
the whole fuck the government thing be a part 2, Jeff?
We can try it.
Okay. Cause it's late now. So
No, I get it. No, we can end it, and if it's not, we can just throw it. I can just put it
Throw
on
it
to the
in.
end of the other ones. Yeah.
Nick, where
No,
are you
no,
doing
no.
this
I
weekend?
think we could do like a little
Like Sunday.
if it's not enough, I think we could talk about other little issues with. No, we can make it work.
We can make it work?
Yeah, don't
Okay.
don't worry about it. We can make it work.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone who's listened. I know this was a little bit different from what we normally do. It's more of a discussion than it was the actual like going into detail with all the facts. But I looked at 3 different sources, and everything I got was just different wording of the same thing, and it just wasn't. It's not that this isn't an interesting case. It definitely is, and I think these two can attest to it. It's weird. It's interesting. It's just there's not a lot of detail to it yet because it is pretty recent still, and that makes it a little bit difficult. But I mean, what do you guys got to say so far about it? I mean, if you got anything, I know you guys usually just tend to say fuck off and tell me to do the rest of the outro, but I mean, you guys got anything for it or?
I blame
Really the big like we all know how shitty these people is. Really, I'm excited for the fuck the government stuff in the next part.
I'm also very excited for fuck the government segment.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But can you guys actually maybe talk about this case in some way, shape, or form?
Oh,
I'm fine with talking about fuck the government at some point. Like I don't give a shit about that. That's fine. I will also
Nick,
say
as
fuck
your
the government.
first as your first knowledge of this case, what are your thoughts? Because you're the only one that didn't do research.
evil gone be evil. I blame the mom's dad for most of this.
I definitely thought he was going to say he blames the Russians, but
Oh no, I blame the mom's dad for most of this because who the fuck lets their 13-year-old daughter marry a 17-year-old guy? That's my.
I don't think he was a part. So a thing with Luis's dad was he left her mom pretty early on because no, he left pretty no. Yes, but he didn't know about the abuse to Luis beforehand, or he learned about it like
much later.
Yeah, he didn't realize that his wife's dad was abusing his daughter.
The abuse of her didn't even come out until after this whole incident happened.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was Luis's sister that came out after this whole incident that said we were all abused growing up.
Yeah. Well, both daughter or both of her sisters were abused. So yeah, I understand the like blame her father, but also like he didn't know a lot of what was happening. He kind of just left.
Kind of like yours, Nick.
He's getting
milk. Oh, okay. I was like,
we'll be back. I swear.
That's our spicy. That's our spicy joke.
Do you know how expensive milk is these days? God. Man.
Oh my god! At this point, what is it like $7
for organic? Who the fuck buys organic milk?
The cows that eat grass.
Yes. Grass-fed beef. Beef.
Fucking hate everything. Continue, Adam. What do you got?
I mean, good on that 17-year-old. Like she put in a lot of effort for this, and She cried during 2020.
She was literally willing to die. Like, she had accepted that, like, if she fucked up, she died.
At least she died trying. Yeah. Like, there were so many parts of the documentary I was like in tears during.
Honestly, go watch the 2020. I think you can only really find it on ABC's website, but it's free. Just go watch it. It's an hour 21. It's them talking to Jordan, who's the one that made the 911 call, and her older sister.
Her older sister, Jennifer, I think so. Yeah. And then they have parts with Joshua, who was their only brother that's willing
didn't want to show his
there.
face. Yeah, he was the oldest brother. Yeah, it's good. You can get most of your information from the documentaries. We're just gonna go more in depth on the psychological bullshit.
Do the outro fast.
No, but best people. We appreciate you listening. Come back for possibly part 2 of this.
I love you.
Oh, I haven't even done the outro yet. You can't just tell me you love me. That's early.
Oh, is that too early in our relationship?
Yeah.
Oh.
Give me literally like a minute, and you can tell them you love them.
Okay.
All right. So in the there's a link in the description. Go to that. That is our link tree. It'll give you everywhere. It'll give you all our social medias. It'll give you everywhere you listen to our podcasts. Even though if you're at this point, you've listened to the podcast, so you know where to fucking find it. But also the top link is to our Podbean, which our Podbean has our Patreon. It's not a Patreon. It's the patron. It's slightly different because it's through Podbean, and we pay them. So that's what we go through. You go to that at the $1 tier, you can get access to our Discord. Also, the $1 level, I believe, is where Adam and I do our movie reviews, right?
Yes.
The $1.
Yes.
Okay. $1 tier, you can get the You Hate to See It Goes to the Movies, which is just Adam and I talking about movies that he has given me to watch for that month. And it's fun because I don't watch fucking shit unless I'm told to. And this has actually forced me to watch things. And this month is Matrix, because this is coming out after the Tick Tick Boom. But we just did Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah.
But also next month, at the end of the month, is Matrix. No, it's a fun time. I haven't seen a lot of things. Adam gives me stuff to watch. Adam gives you a little bit of a fun, in-depth look at things because Adam is the way he is and studied this stuff. So he knows a little bit more about movies than most people would think. Just watching a movie, Adam looks at it a little bit differently, as I noticed when I was like, hey Adam, we should watch this horror movie, and I watched it and he was like, this camera's shaking. I was like, no, it's not. And then I looked at it and it was shaking, and I hated the rest of the movie. It was a great time.
I dare everyone to watch The Dark Knight and not notice that Christian Bale has a mole next to his eye, in the like little crook between his eye and his nose. And enjoy.
Which eye?
I don't know. I just
his eyes. Look at it.
Completely ruins the movie for me.
Left eye.
Left eye. $3 tier, you get the unedited episodes of our podcast, all of them.
This one was a doozy. This episode was a doozy.
Yeah, this one's a bad one. This one's a shit show.
I blame Putin. Like, Putin's actually responsible.
No, I mean, honestly, World War III.
That one's actually his fault. Yeah.
I mean, outside of that, though, I mean, that's it. I mean, I appreciate you. I'm glad you listen to us. I don't know why, but I'm proud that you listen.
I love you, and I'm gonna take all of Nick's thing. I love you guys so much. Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Look, I got excited after the night we had together. I'm sorry, I didn't. I know I might have hurt your feelings. I don't know.
You came in me.
So sorry.
There's a lack of end recording there.